Let me ask you something that I think you already know the answer to, but haven't said out loud in a while. When is the last time you slept through the entire night and woke up actually feeling rested? Not just tolerably, not just well enough to get through the day, actually restored. The kind of sleep where you open your eyes in the morning and feel like your body used the night the way it was supposed to. For a lot of people watching this, it's been a long time, maybe years. And I'll tell you what most of you have probably been told when you brought it up, that poor sleep is just part of getting older, that it's normal, that it's something you learn to live with. I want to push back on that, gently but firmly. Yes, sleep changes with age. The biology shifts. I'll explain exactly how and why in a few minutes, because understanding what's actually happening in your body makes everything else make more sense.
But there is a meaningful difference between the natural sleep changes that come with aging and the kind of fragmented, exhausting, unrestorative sleep that millions of older Americans are suffering through, often because of specific habits that are quietly sabotaging their nights without them ever realizing it. And here's what I find most difficult about this. Several of these habits feel completely harmless. Some of them even feel like they should help you sleep. One of them, and I'll get to this one specifically because it surprises almost everyone, happens in the last few minutes before you turn off the light, and it's one of the most disruptive things you can do to your brain's ability to reach deep sleep. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly what your body needs to sleep well after 60, what's most likely been getting in the way, and what small, consistent changes can genuinely begin to shift things, not overnight, but meaningfully over time. I've worked with a lot of older adults who came to me exhausted, not just tired in the way you'd expect after a busy day, but the kind of exhausted that accumulates when you haven't slept deeply in months, where you drag yourself through the morning, where your memory feels foggy by afternoon, where your mood has changed in ways that quietly worry you and the people around you. And the thing I always want them to understand is this: poor sleep is not a trivial quality of life complaint. It is a physiological issue with real, measurable consequences throughout the body. When you don't sleep well, when you're spending night after night in light, fragmented sleep rather than the deep and REM stages your body needs, your inflammatory markers rise. Your cortisol the next morning is higher than it should be, which raises blood sugar. Your insulin sensitivity drops, meaning your body handles glucose less effectively the entire following day. Your heart rate variability decreases, which is a marker of cardiovascular stress. Your brain's overnight cleaning process, where cerebrospinal fluid literally flushes metabolic waste from brain tissue, becomes incomplete. Poor sleep isn't just making you tired. It's making your blood sugar harder to control. It's making your heart work harder. It's accumulating inflammation throughout your body. And it's reducing the brain's ability to maintain the cognitive sharpness that matters enormously as we age. All of that from not sleeping well. So let's talk about why sleep is harder after 60. And then let's get into the 5 mistakes, because some of what I'm about to share will reframe habits you've had for years. Here's what changes biologically. As you age, your brain produces less melatonin, the hormone that signals to your body that darkness has arrived and it's time to begin the descent into sleep. Think of melatonin as your brain's dimmer switch. In younger adults, it rises sharply in the evening and keeps the sleep signal strong throughout the night. After 60, that production is lower, slower to rise, and fades earlier in the night. Your circadian rhythm, the internal clock that governs your sleep-wake cycle, also shifts forward with age. Many older adults find themselves genuinely sleepy earlier in the evening and awake earlier in the morning, which is a natural biological change rather than a personal quirk. Your sleep architecture changes too. You spend less time in the deepest stages of slow-wave sleep, the stages where physical restoration happens most powerfully, and you're more easily aroused during the night. Lighter sounds, temperature changes, the need to urinate, because the threshold between sleep and waking simply becomes lower. All of this means your sleep system has less margin for error than it did at 40. Habits that your body could absorb easily then, staying up late, eating a big dinner, having a drink before bed, have a much more significant impact on sleep quality now. The buffer is gone. And that's exactly why the 5 mistakes I'm about to walk through matter so much more at this stage of life. The first mistake is one that practically every American over 60 makes regularly, often without a second thought: spending the hour before bed with screens. Television, smartphones, tablets, laptops, any device with a bright backlit display. And I want to be specific about why this is so damaging, because simply being told that screens are bad for sleep isn't enough information to actually motivate change. Your eyes contain specialized cells, different from the ones responsible for regular vision, that are uniquely sensitive to blue wavelength light, the kind of light that screens emit in abundance. These cells connect directly to the part of the brain that controls melatonin production, and when they detect blue light, they send a signal that says, "It is daytime. Do not release melatonin. Stay alert." Your brain, receiving that signal at 9 or 10 in the evening, does exactly what it's told. It suppresses the melatonin that was supposed to begin rising. It keeps your alertness elevated. And when you finally put the phone down and try to sleep, your brain is not in the gradual descent toward deep rest that it should be. It's been chemically held in a waking state, and it takes time to recover from that, time that comes directly out of your most valuable sleep hours. Research from Harvard Medical School has found that exposure to bright screen light in the evening can delay melatonin onset by up to 3 hours and reduce total melatonin production significantly. For an older adult whose melatonin production is already lower than it was decades ago, that suppression is not a minor inconvenience. It's the difference between reaching deep sleep and spending the night in light, restless, unrestorative cycling near the surface. The change here doesn't have to be absolute. Reducing screen use in the 60 to 90 minutes before bed, replacing it with something that doesn't emit blue light, whether that's reading a physical book, listening to calm audio, or simply sitting in dim light, makes a measurable difference. Many televisions and phones now have night mode settings that warm the screen color in the evening, which reduces but doesn't eliminate the impact. The second mistake is one that surprises a lot of people because it happens well before bedtime, and most people don't connect it to their sleep at all. Caffeine consumed too late in the day. I talked in another video about the relationship between coffee and blood sugar, and the timing issue came up there too. But for sleep specifically, the concern is this. Caffeine has a half-life of 5 to 7 hours in most adults. In older adults, where liver metabolism slows with age, that half-life can stretch closer to 8 or 9 hours. What that means practically is that a cup of coffee at 2 in the afternoon still has half its caffeine circulating in your brain at 9 or 10 at night. It's not keeping you awake in an obvious way. You can fall asleep fine, and you may genuinely believe the coffee has no effect on you. But what caffeine does, even at lower concentrations, is suppress the depth of slow-wave sleep. It keeps your brain from reaching the restorative deep stages, even when you're technically asleep, so you sleep, but you don't get the sleep your body needed, and you wake up feeling like the night didn't do much for you, which it didn't. Not because you slept poorly in any obvious way, but because the caffeine you had at 2 in the afternoon quietly prevented your brain from going as deep as it needed to. The recommendation I give my patients is simple. Finish caffeinated coffee by noon. Move afternoon warm drinks to herbal tea, which is also hydrating and can actually support relaxation depending on the blend. Chamomile, passion flower, and lemon balm teas have genuine evidence behind their calming effects, and they give you the ritual of a warm drink in the afternoon without the sleep cost. The third mistake is the one I mentioned at the very beginning. The one that happens in the last few minutes before bed, that most people believe is helping them wind down, when it's actually working directly against deep sleep. A glass of wine or a drink of alcohol before bed. I want to be careful here because I understand this is a sensitive subject. Many older adults have had a nightly glass of wine as part of their evening routine for years. It feels relaxing. It takes the edge off the day. It seems to help with sleep because it makes falling asleep easier. But here's what the research shows clearly and consistently. While alcohol does help you fall asleep faster, it fundamentally disrupts the architecture of sleep in the second half of the night. As alcohol is metabolized, which happens while you sleep, it creates a rebound effect. The sedative effect fades, and the nervous system activates, pulling you out of deep sleep and into lighter stages. You may start waking in the early morning hours, 2 or 3 or 4 a.m., and find it difficult to get back to sleep. You may have vivid or disturbing dreams. You may feel a kind of restless alertness that wasn't there at the beginning of the night. Alcohol also suppresses REM sleep, the stage most associated with memory consolidation, emotional regulation, and cognitive restoration. A night of alcohol-affected sleep may give you adequate hours, but deeply inadequate quality. And the connection to blood sugar here is worth mentioning. Alcohol affects liver function during the night, interfering with the liver's role in maintaining stable glucose levels while you sleep. This can contribute to blood sugar drops in the early morning hours that trigger a cortisol response, which wakes you up, raises your heart rate, and makes it very difficult to return to meaningful sleep. If a nightly drink is part of your routine, I'm not asking you to eliminate it on the basis of this one conversation, but I'd invite you to try skipping it for 2 weeks and paying close attention to what happens to your sleep in the second half of the night. For many older adults, the difference is striking enough to be its own motivation. The fourth mistake is eating a large or heavy meal within 2 to 3 hours of going to bed. I know this one is sometimes hard to avoid. Dinner happens when it happens, and life doesn't always cooperate with ideal timing. But the physiology here is worth understanding. After a large meal, your digestive system requires significant blood flow and metabolic activity to process what you've eaten. Your core body temperature rises slightly as digestion generates heat. Insulin is released to manage the incoming glucose load. The whole system is actively working, and all of that activity runs counter to what your body needs to transition into sleep. Sleep initiation and maintenance require your core body temperature to drop. This cooling is actually one of the key triggers for melatonin release and the descent into deep sleep. A large meal late in the evening actively interferes with that cooling process, keeping your core temperature elevated when it needs to be falling. Heavy, high-fat meals are particularly problematic because fat takes longer to digest than protein or carbohydrates. A large pasta dish or a steak dinner at 8 p.m. can have your digestive system working actively until midnight, which is exactly when you should be in the deepest stages of sleep. The practical approach is to try to finish your largest meal of the day by 6 or 7 in the evening when possible. If you eat later, keep it lighter, something that can be processed quickly without a major digestive commitment. A small handful of nuts, a small portion of lean protein, or something similar near bedtime is far less disruptive than a full meal. And if you wake during the night and wonder whether blood sugar is involved, which it sometimes is, particularly in those with diabetes or prediabetes, a small protein-containing snack before bed can help stabilize glucose through the night. Something like a tablespoon of almond butter or a small amount of Greek yogurt. Not sugar, not carbohydrates on their own. Something that releases energy slowly and steadily so the liver doesn't need to compensate with a cortisol surge at 3 in the morning. The fifth mistake is one that feels the most invisible of all, because it's not a specific thing you do. It's the absence of something your body needs, done consistently, night after night. A regular, stable sleep schedule. Your circadian rhythm, the internal clock that governs every hormonal and physiological cycle in your body, runs on consistency. It anticipates, it prepares. In the hours before your usual sleep time, it begins releasing melatonin, lowering body temperature, slowing digestion, and reducing cortisol. All of that preparation is built around the expectation of a predictable rhythm. When that rhythm varies, when you go to bed at 9 on Tuesday, midnight on Thursday, and 10:30 on Saturday, your circadian clock cannot prepare effectively. It doesn't know when to start the countdown. The hormonal preparation that should be happening in advance of sleep either starts too early and fades before you get to bed, or starts too late and leaves you lying awake, waiting for a biological tide that hasn't arrived yet. This inconsistency is sometimes called social jet lag, and research has shown that it produces measurable effects on sleep quality, blood sugar, inflammation, and cardiovascular function, similar in some ways to actually changing time zones frequently. Your body is always slightly out of sync with itself, always catching up, never quite where it needs to be. The fix sounds deceptively simple. Pick a consistent bedtime and a consistent wake time, and protect them with the same commitment you'd give to a medical appointment, even on weekends, even when you don't feel tired at the usual time. Within a few weeks, your circadian rhythm recalibrates, the hormonal preparation becomes reliable again, and the quality of your sleep, not just the hours, but the actual depth and restoration, begins to improve. I'd love to hear from you in the comments right now. How many hours of sleep are you getting? And more importantly, do you wake during the night? Multiple times? And does morning leave you feeling restored, or are you starting each day already running on empty? Tell me which of these 5 mistakes surprised you most. And tell me where you're watching from. We have people from all across the country in this community, and I love knowing who's here. Here's what I want you to take away from this conversation. Poor sleep after 60 is not your fate. It is not simply the price of aging. It is, in most cases, the accumulated result of several small, fixable habits that have quietly been working against your body's natural sleep system. A system that is still there, still capable, still trying to do its job every single night. Melatonin doesn't disappear after 60. Slow-wave sleep doesn't become impossible. Deep, restorative rest is still available to you. It just requires a little more intentional support than it did when you were younger, because your sleep system has a smaller margin for interference, and some of the habits that used to cost you nothing now cost you considerably more than you realize. You don't have to change everything at once. Pick the one mistake from today's list that resonates most strongly with your own routine. Start there. Be consistent with it for 2 weeks and genuinely pay attention to what shifts. Small changes, consistently practiced, are how sleep improves in real life. Not dramatically and overnight, but gradually and meaningfully in ways that touch everything else. Your energy, your blood sugar the next morning, your mood, your memory, your heart. If this video helped you see your nights a little differently, please share it with someone who's been struggling with sleep and blaming it entirely on age. They deserve to know there may be more they can do. Subscribe if you'd like to keep receiving this kind of honest, evidence-based guidance built around the health challenges that matter most after 60. Every video on this channel is made with one goal: to give you information that genuinely moves the needle on how you feel. And the video on morning blood sugar habits is linked right here, because what happens at night and what happens in your first hour of morning are more connected than most people realize. Understanding both gives you a much more complete picture of how to feel better every day. Sleep well tonight. Your body is ready to, and now you're a little better equipped to let it.